Joining us now, talk radio host Richard Eeds, Ross Kaminsky. Gentlemen, appreciate you being here. We'll see if we can't keep the discussion more civil than it gets on Twitter sometimes. To that point, Ross, reasonable people can agree that the language that is being used at times by both sides has gone beyond the pale. The base loves it. I'm wondering, though, out in Denver where you are and in Colorado, as your listeners call, anybody frustrated that stuff still isn't getting done on Capitol Hill while everybody snipes at each other?
You know, Leland, and thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you in 2019. I would say that radio listeners tend to be the base of their parties in a lot of ways. Where I'm hearing more pushback is just out, talking to someone in line at the supermarket or staff here at the TV station who I was just talking to, who are saying things like, they should worry about opening the government before they start talking about impeachment. I do think that most real people in the real world, they're used to this incivility, and they don't really care so much about whether someone's insulting someone else. They just care about whether they're getting the job done.
Richard, does the incivility keep the job from getting done?
I think sometimes, and thank you for having us on today, and good morning from Santa Fe. I think sometimes it does, because we're talking about it. They're talking about it on Capitol Hill. Social media is talking about it. Radio's talking about it. Television's talking about it. Once again, rather than talking about the issues. Here in New Mexico, where we are impacted, the state most impacted in the country by the government shutdown, 23 tribes being severely impacted. I mean, these are the things that we need to be dealing with rather than vitriol on social media.
For our viewers who aren't as familiar with what you just brought up, 23 tribes, Indian tribes now that don't have money to pay teachers, to pay for health care, to pay for food stamps, and the like. You're also, though, Richard, and it's fair to say, impacted by the flood of illegal immigration across the border. People are going to debate the numbers back and forth. But when it comes to this issue of government shutdown, I'm wondering in New Mexico if there's not this dichotomy of a lot of people also saying, look, call it a fence, call it a wall, whatever it is, but we need to deal with what's happening at the border.
Well, we have a fence. We have a fence down near Las Cruces and Santa Teresa and Columbus and even over towards Antelope Wells. We do have a fence. It works to a point. Here's the facts, Leland. I mean, we need to concentrate on actually what is happening. You can get more information from testimony this week, not testimony in Capitol Hill, testimony in New York City in the trial of El Chapo Guzman about what the real threat is, where we need to focus on interdiction, and it is not coming across the border. You can listen to the narco-terrorist, alleged narco-terrorist El Chapo, and you can hear in the testimony in his trial where the drugs are coming across by the ton. It is not coming across with people walking across the border.
I'm glad you got the alleged part in there, because hasn't been convicted yet. Ross, your thoughts on this? Can Republicans figure out a way to leverage what Richard's been talking about here, and also sell the idea that in order to stop the threat of drugs, you need a fence?
I think that they can if Donald Trump will start broadening the conversation a little bit. Every time he keeps coming back to a concrete wall, he hurts his own position. I think that, broadly speaking, the public is in favor of more border security, and Trump has kind of boxed himself in between the wall and those 15 minutes with Chuck and Nancy where he said he would take ownership of the shutdown. He has now given Democrats, who are more interested in a political victory than good policy for the country, all the reason they need to do what they're doing now.
Richard, this brings up an interesting point. You said that there's a fence down in southern New Mexico where you are on the border, and that to a certain extent it works. People have a tougher time climbing over fences than they do walking across a piece of sand where there's no fence. That is an indisputed fact. At the same time, you have Democrats, Nancy Pelosi, not the most extreme part of her caucus, saying not $1 for a wall, or not $1 for what President Trump wants to build, and the wall is immoral, quote unquote. So does that mean that the fence down in southern New Mexico is immoral as well, and the government should just take it down?
No, it does not mean it's immoral. We do need border security. Democrats agree we need border security. What is immoral is what happened to a 7-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy who came across the border, and 3 years into his administration, 2 years into the administration and 1 year of campaigning, the central issue for President Trump has been immigration and the border and the wall. And yet when immigrants come across the border, they're not prepared. It is a sign of incompetency, which I can only compare to 2003 invading Iraq. They're incompetent.
Nobody's going to argue that those deaths were tragic. I think it's pretty difficult, though, to equate them to incompetency of an entire administration. Ross, so this brings up an important point that Richard said. It's been 2 years. How much longer do your listeners and does the base give President Trump to not have a wall built, to not have a true stop of illegal immigration across the border? This was his signature domestic policy issue. Republicans controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House for 2 years.
So I think most Trump supporters, including those among my listeners, They think that Trump fights against his own party, fights against the establishment, fights against everyone to get done what he wants to get done. As long as it appears like he's still trying to get it done, they'll give him a break.
So it's much more about the fight than it is about the policy.
For now. But if he gets to 2020 and there's nothing that he has at least sold to his base as the equivalent of a wall, even if it isn't exactly what they thought they were talking about before, there's no way he's going to win re-election unless maybe the Dems put Hillary up again, which they won't.
The president has a unique ability to claim victory despite different facts on the ground than you might say. Richard, to that end, is it better for Democrats to have this as a bully pulpit? Do they enjoy more political gain by fighting against the wall than they do fixing border security or fixing immigration?
No, I don't believe so, Leland. I believe the Democrats, either the new Democrats or the Democrats in the House and the Senate would like to get to the business. They want to communicate, they want to legislate, and they want to investigate. How can you
say that? You have one freshman up there saying on day one all she cares about is impeaching. She didn't say President Trump. She used some other words that we won't use on family-friendly television.
Right.
All right.
That is one person, and there is a risk in that.
All right.
There is a risk in that.
All right. Richard, Ross, great conversation, gentlemen. Appreciate you keeping it above the discussion that often happens on Twitter. I know it's a challenge. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thanks for having us.
Good seeing you both.